I know what you see today. Hollywood's action hero, box office king, motivational machine who somehow wakes up at 4 a.m. with a smile. But before I became The Rock, I was just The Rock at the door. My job? Standing outside a nightclub, trying to look scary in a black t-shirt 2 sizes too small. Spoiler, I didn't need to try that hard. At 6'5" and built like a human refrigerator, I was already the most intimidating thing on the sidewalk. The job wasn't glamorous. Forget red carpets. My carpets were sticky dance floors. My daily task was sorting through fake IDs that looked like they'd been printed on a home computer. If someone's ID said they were born in 1979 but their face screamed high school junior, guess what? They weren't getting in. I had the patience of a saint, but sometimes it felt like babysitting an army of glitter-covered toddlers who smelled like cheap energy drinks. Of course, the best part was the excuses. Oh, the creativity. My cousin owns this place. I lost my real ID, but trust me, I'm 25. Or the classic, come on man, the DJ is my uncle. None of them worked. I didn't care if they claimed to know the mayor, the bartender, or Beyoncé herself. If the math didn't add up, they weren't crossing my line. The only thing they achieved was giving me free stand-up comedy material. And let's not forget the golden phrase, "Do you know who I am?" I heard that at least 3 times a night. My answer was always the same. Nope, and I don't care. If your best claim to fame is being the captain of your college dodgeball team, you're not impressing anyone. I was polite, but I never broke character. In that world, I wasn't Dwayne Johnson. I was the door, and the door did not negotiate. Looking back, I realized that job was my first acting role. I wasn't just checking IDs. I was playing a character, a calm, unshakable mountain who kept chaos in order. Little did I know, those nights were rehearsals for something bigger. Controlling a crowd of drunk 20-somethings wasn't that different from controlling an arena of wrestling fans years later. The stage was different, but the energy was the same. Being a nightclub bouncer was like spinning a roulette wheel every night. You never knew what was coming. Sometimes it was harmless comedy, like a guy moonwalking his way to the exit because I told him he'd had enough. Other times it was chaos. I once saw a guy propose to his girlfriend in the middle of the dance floor. Sweet, right? 5 minutes later, the same couple was yelling at each other because she accepted the ring but also accepted a free shot from the bartender. Sometimes I felt less like security and more like a therapist on call. People would stumble outside to get some air, and suddenly I became their confessional. "Bro, she doesn't understand me," one guy cried, dripping tequila tears onto my arm. I'd just nod, silently wondering why the universe made me the unofficial Dr. Phil of the sidewalk. Newsflash, I was barely keeping my own life together. How was I supposed to fix theirs? But of course, not every night was sob stories and fake IDs. Sometimes things got messy. Arguments escalated, voices rose, and suddenly I was standing between 2 guys who thought they were auditioning for a UFC fight. My favorite move? Silence. I'd just stare. At 6'5", 260 pounds, silence was louder than any threat. Most of the time, one glare from me was enough to end the fight before it started. But when the stare didn't work, well, then came the part I hated, but also secretly loved. Picking someone up by their collar and walking them out like they were a misbehaving puppy was oddly satisfying. They'd scream, they'd swear, sometimes even promise revenge. Yet somehow, they always came back the next week with an awkward smile, pretending none of it happened. Apparently, nightclub amnesia is real. In those moments, I realized something. This job wasn't just about muscle, it was about control. Mental, emotional, and physical. It was about knowing when to push and when to hold back. And that's when it hit me. The chaos of a nightclub was training me for something bigger. If I could handle drunk chaos at 2 a.m., I could handle anything. Even a wrestling ring filled with 20,000 screaming fans. While I was busy stopping drunk college kids from sneaking in, my mind was always somewhere else. Sure, I was the bouncer, but deep down, I wanted more. I'd lean against the door, arms crossed, but in my head I wasn't blocking entry. I was running onto a football field or standing in front of a camera on a movie set. My muscles were guarding a nightclub, but my imagination was rehearsing for something way bigger than sticky floors and neon lights. I've always been a performer. Even as a bouncer, I couldn't resist putting on a show. If someone tried to argue with me, I'd throw in dramatic pauses, eyebrow raises, even a mock wrestling pose just to make them laugh or back off. The truth is, I wasn't just protecting a club, I was testing my ability to hold a crowd's attention. The dance floor might not have been Madison Square Garden, but it was still an audience, and I was learning how to own it. But trust me, the reality wasn't glamorous. After a long night, I'd drag myself home covered in glitter, smelling like cigarette smoke, and wondering if I'd ever catch a break. It's hard to feel like a future superstar when your main accomplishment of the evening was stopping a guy from stealing a bar stool. Yet even in those moments, some part of me believed I was meant for more. Every shift reinforced the same thought. If I could control drunk chaos at 2 a.m., I could control any audience anywhere. It was all about presence, about confidence, about making people believe you were the biggest force in the room. That skill would become my secret weapon later in wrestling. But at the time, I just called it survival. Because let's face it, nobody wants to get tackled by 5 tequila-fueled guys on a Friday night. So, I made a decision. The nightclub would not be my final stage. I would chase something bigger, wrestling, movies, whatever path opened first. The bouncer gig gave me money for food and rent, but more importantly, it gave me practice. Practice at keeping my cool, practice at holding attention, practice at being larger than life. And eventually I realized I wasn't just standing at the door, I was standing at the door of my future. Stepping into the wrestling world felt strangely familiar, like trading one kind of chaos for another. The difference? This time I wasn't guarding a nightclub door. I was stepping through the ropes of a wrestling ring. Instead of turning away drunk partygoers, I was throwing down with giants in spandex. But the energy? Exactly the same. Crowds screaming, lights flashing, and me trying to stay calm in the middle of madness. It was like the nightclub, only louder, bigger, and with fireworks. I'll never forget the first time I raised my eyebrow in the ring. The crowd went nuts. All those nights at the club where I practiced intimidating stares suddenly paid off. Only now, instead of scaring off drunk teenagers, I was electrifying thousands of fans. Who knew my bouncer glare would become one of the most iconic moves in wrestling history? Sometimes life has a funny way of recycling your old skills. In many ways, wrestling was just an extension of bouncing. Both jobs required control, presence, and performance. At the club, I had to convince people I was the immovable wall. In the ring, I had to convince them I was the unstoppable force. The only difference was that in wrestling, people actually paid money to see me throw someone out, without getting banned from the building afterward. The WWE gave me something the nightclub never could, a stage big enough to match my dreams. Suddenly, I wasn't just the door, I was The Rock, the most electrifying man in sports entertainment. And let me tell you, once you get a taste of that kind of energy, there's no going back. No sticky dance floors, no fake IDs, just pure adrenaline, pyrotechnics, and catchphrases shouted by millions. But here's the funny part. Even as I was climbing the ladder of wrestling fame, I never forgot the lessons from those nightclub nights. Every time I walked down that entrance ramp and saw the crowd, it reminded me of waiting outside the club at 2 a.m., scanning faces, feeling the energy of the people. Only this time they weren't trying to sneak in. They were already inside, and they wanted me to put on the show of a lifetime. Looking back now, it's hilarious. The same guy who once spent his nights checking fake IDs and breaking up drunk arguments is now starring in blockbuster movies, flying around the world, and somehow managing to post motivational videos at sunrise. People see The Rock and think of strength, success, and fame. But underneath it all, I'll never forget the smell of spilled beer, glitter stuck to my shirt, and the voice in my head saying, "There's got to be more than this." I could have stayed at that door forever. Plenty of guys did. Easy paycheck, free drinks, a good story every now and then. But I knew that wasn't my destiny. The nightclub was just the warm-up act, the rehearsal before the real show. It taught me patience, discipline, and how to handle chaos without losing my cool. And when Hollywood finally opened its doors, I walked through like I'd been practicing my whole life. Because, in a way, I had. Being a bouncer also gave me something priceless. Perspective. Fame is cool, but you don't forget the nights when you were carrying drunk strangers out to the sidewalk while they swore you'd regret it. Today, I laugh about it. Those same nights made me humble, made me grateful, and gave me endless stories to tell. Without them, maybe I wouldn't appreciate the view from the top as much as I do now. At the end of the day, I wasn't just guarding a door, I was learning how to command a room, how to hold attention, how to stand tall no matter the situation. Those skills became my brand. They helped me conquer wrestling, movies, business, and beyond. Funny enough, the job everyone thought was just muscle work turned out to be my best training camp for superstardom. So yeah, before I was The Rock, I was the door. The guy who decided who got in and who stayed out. And if you ask me, it was the perfect beginning. Because life is all about doors. Some you guard, some you close, and some you walk through with your head high. I chose to walk through mine, and the world has been wide open ever since.